sharp. Huh?
All right, thank you for being here. This is the 3D UI session, PS6. We have 4 gray papers. My name is Francisco Ortega, and I'll be sharing this. We're going to get right to it. Today, the first presenter is Antonio Uva.
No, Michele Fiorentino.
I'm sorry,
No, no problem.
Michele Fiorentino. And he's presenting precise tool positioning widgets in spatial environments, a systematic review. So thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, everybody. I want to start breaking the ice for this session by asking you a question. So it's a weird question, but it's a question. Are you able to shave with a straight razor? Raise your hands. Yes, 1, 2, okay. Yes, 2 in the audience. Actually, it's not that easy, and you are needed to have a very sharp and very precise precision in movement, and if you do a mistake, then you are full of blood. So, fact is, the new generation, as demonstrated by science, has less capability in motor skills, and this is the main topic of this talk, of this research. And the problem we are addressing is dexterity. Dexterity comes from Latin. I'm Italian, so I have to explain about that. Right hand, so is about skilled motor coordination and between hands and tool. And this is very important for many industry. In fact, from medical industry, we are starting our research, because this research was motivated from a work that will be presented as well in ISMAR, and about helping dentists to be precise during implantology. Implantology needs very good precision, not only in the space, in positioning, but most of that in rotational, because if you make a mistake later in drilling, you can have a problem. By starting by this application, we want to use mixed reality to help dentists doing their job. And what we discovered that we were looking for guidelines, helping standards and whatever, and instead we not only we didn't find any of those, but also we see that it's a kind of lack of research community in precise dexterity helped by mixed reality. And we really think that it's a very interesting and open research topic. So maybe some of you here in the audience are doing that, but it's missing a common name for that. So for this, we started with trying to give a name. With Mina, she's here as an author as well. We tried to think to some names, and we come up with this one. TOTTA, which is basically the guidance of real or virtual tool towards a real or virtual target. So we tried to give this name, so maybe the scientific community one day can be quicker in defining this problem. And actually, it's not is a sub-part of UI research because it considers a tool in the equation. Another example of UI research, like drag and drop, aiming, aligning, docking, they don't contemplate the tool. So this is why we need another research name. And so the basic contribution for the community, we make a research about these widgets, about if there is in literature any example of mixed reality widget helping the TOTTA problem, and if there is a common mechanism, a common design, if it's a golden standard, and if there are any issues or perspective we can add. So we started with the plain systematic review. The systematic review is a pretty standard using a Prisma method. We went through the common tree databases you clearly know from this community. And the original query was pretty large, 200 findings. But at the end, we take it out a lot of stuff because most of them are not related to TOTTA problem, or they are not included some designs that we can study, or at least is not relevant for our study as well. So the final peak seems limited to 24 papers, but those papers are interesting because they address the problem and show anyway that the community is starting recently work on this topic, and there is a mild growing in paper and citation as well. Curious to know that the research objectives that we found is not specifically to widget design as we expected originally, but is more associated to novel devices. So in particular, when a lot of researchers build up new hardware, new software are also developed. But it's interesting that this community is limited in developing fully virtual widgets. And the majority of contribution are in conference. So this is the abacus that we build it up, we read all the papers, and we reconstruct the shapes used. So this is our work. We bring the tool object on the top and the target widget on the right down. And as you can see, there are a lot of different and weird widget designs. So these are actually widgets that must provide the first differentiation between the tool and the target, differentiate and help user to find a unique and precise positioning between in the space. So position and rotation, they should be intuitive and minimize occlusion. You can see there are a lot of colors and shapes, and you can see there are rabbits, there are teapots and strange stuff. So this is pretty weird. Well, apart from the difference you notice from the very beginning, at least we found a very nice finding that there is a common mechanism under those number of widgets, and the common mechanism is reification. So it means reification is a property of Gestalt principle, which is a quick and pre-attentive capability of human to find aligning geometries. Okay, so like this one. This cube is not existing, but in our brain, in our spatial memory, becomes very clear. And so this is a good choice, because there is a bit behind this mechanism, there is a very pre-attentive and immediate approach. And from widget design purely, we notice that most pairs have the same geometry, and in particular, the box, so the cube, is not the easiest geometry capable to give a spatial index, but is the most used, probably because it's more easy to use. And tetrahedron instead is technically the first geometry able to convey a unique ID. But you see that box is very common, and because the shape is the same, the distinction between tool and target is done by color or second choice transparency. Here there's an example of the tool widget, the target widget, and when they are collimated, the user will see them one over the other. And as you can see, most of the papers give also feedback. The feedback is usually a color change. You see here an example, and when a certain amount of threshold in error, both positional and angular, are is below the error, the widget change color usually, or second choice sound. And however, we notice that whenever you start being in collimation area, it's harder for the user to have information about how to correct the problem. So in our final application, which was medical, we want to focus a lot on precision. And for precision, we need more than just a completion task feedback. And therefore, we looked for some of the paper, if clearly missing a standard framework, an experiment in order to compare one-to-one the widgets. In addition, as not the last list, but not the last but not the least, enforce diversity, because the studies are only with students, so we can go to different age and different people. It's very important to add that. For that, I'm finished. Thank you very much. These are the QR code. I'm open for any question. Thanks. And I finish also in.
Thank you so much. Questions?
Hello, thank you for the interesting talk. I was kind of wondering, in the systematic review that you have done, to what extent did you also consider the type of tool that was actually being used in the different research papers? Because some tools can be gigantic, I would say. Some can be straight in front of the user, arm's length away, very close by. There's a lot of variations in it, as you probably also know from work of your own students as well. So I'm kind of wondering, like, what's your opinion on this, and also like what you have found as well.
Okay, thank you. So these are two questions. So about the tool, the type of tools, actually, as you see, the bibliogrammetric, few of the finding were dedicated to tool and were mostly medical. I don't know the industrial, I don't remember, but they are not statistically relevant. But it's very interesting one day when we have more tool, we are, I think, at the very beginning of the research, as you know. So this could be really, an extra detail. At this moment, I think we are really breaking the ice with technology. And probably the second question was about, it's a kind of, because I split in two questions. The second was...
Yeah, I think the second was more about like how you think that the visual feedback kind of affects also the way of, like, if you have like a very large tool or anything like that, and what kind of effects you would expect from those things.
That's the second question. So, I think that a well-designed widget can be independent from the tool sites. So if it works, it will be appear overimposing the tool, but is probably you know what you have in mind, and so probably doesn't work. But that's also something we can work together or in the community, because the problem, I think it's open issue. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for a short question. Anyone? Well, when you did the systematic literature review, was the keyword medical had to be there, or no?
No. Okay. We look for, yes, we don't put the query because it's pretty complex.
Right.
Because it was a combination of 4 queries together. We don't limit it to any particular application. So we want to be general. Actually, this is the scope of this work, to be as much as general as we could.
Well, thank you so much. Let's
You're
thanks
welcome.
Michele. Thanks, Michele. So next, we have multiple monitors or a single canvas, evaluating Windows management and layout strategies on virtual display. It's being presented by Bowman. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Francisco, and thanks for being here. Again, I'm Bowman from Virginia Tech. I'm here on behalf of my co-authors, Leonardo Pavanatto, who was the main student who worked on this project and has since graduated and gone off into the working world. Also, my other co-author, Feiyu is here, so ask him the hard questions, if you would, please. So our work is motivated by the extensive need for technology for productivity work, right? So all of us are knowledge workers. We do productivity work on computers constantly in order to be able to present here at conferences like ISMAR. And of course, we use physical monitors with our computers to do that work. And in particular, when you're doing very complex work with lots of windows, lots of people like multi-monitor setups. And so you might have 2 monitors, 3 monitors, 6 monitors, 9 monitors, as shown in the images here. But of course, this is not feasible for all contexts, right? So these physical monitors occupy lots of physical space, which we may not have. They're certainly not portable. You can't take them on the airplane with you. And they're costly. And the more space you need, the more monitors you have to purchase. So obviously, this is an opportunity for AR/VR. We can use these XR technologies to create virtual displays, as illustrated here. So instead of physical multi-monitors, we can create virtual monitors anywhere in space. We can use them in any context as long as a head-worn display can be used. So we define a virtual display as an interface that's displayed through a head-worn display that extends or replaces a physical monitor of a personal computer and provides the same computation capability. So you can run the same applications and use the same input devices. And we can display those windows or monitors on a plane or a curved 2D manifold. And so obviously this addresses all of the problems that were on the last slide. These are fully portable, they can be used anywhere at any time, and the cost is fixed. You have the cost of the head-worn display, and that's it. You can have as many displays as you want. So, whoops, there we go. So virtual displays obviously come with another advantage in that they are super flexible. Since the monitors and the screens are fully virtual, we can display them in ways that are not possible with physical monitors. And so in particular, one thing you can do is if you have a multi-monitor setup like the one on the top, if it's all virtual, you can just remove those boundaries between the displays and create one large virtual canvas. And this seems attractive, right? Those boundaries are not a necessary part of the task. But on the other hand, prior research has shown that people can use those boundaries to help with organization. And so if we create large virtual canvases like this using AR/VR technology, how is this going to affect window management and performance and user experience? So the objective of this work was to investigate the effect of removing those boundaries when we use large displays through AR. Okay, so this video will explain how the experiment was set up. We had 4 different conditions in our experiment. So obviously, just multi-monitor versus canvas as far as display style, but then we also had hybrid versus purely virtual setup. So this is the hybrid virtual monitor, hybrid multi-monitor where there's a physical monitor in the middle and then 5 virtual monitors surrounding it. Here's the purely virtual multi-mon. So here we just have kind of artificial boundaries between the 6 virtual monitors. And as you can see, in both of these multi-monitor conditions, there was also snapping. So you could snap either to the full monitor size or to half of a monitor as you moved a window. And then here's the hybrid canvas condition. This has a physical monitor in the center and then a large space on the sides and above, which has no boundaries. And obviously, finally, the virtual canvas condition where it was simply one large virtual space with no boundaries and no snapping. This was all implemented on the HoloLens 2, and there's a lot of technical details which were in the paper, which I will not go into here, but if you have questions, ask Feiyu. All right, so our study really addressed 2 research questions. The first is just about the comparison between the canvas and multi-monitor display styles. So how is that going to affect window management strategies and organization? And I'm not going to read through the hypotheses now because I'll revisit them when we get to the end of the results. But then we had the second variable, which we were also interested in. How do those effects of multi-monitor versus canvas change when we compare these hybrid setups where we're extending a physical monitor versus the purely virtual setup? So we ran an experiment with 40 participants. The display style, multi-monitor versus canvas, was varied within subjects, so everybody experienced both of those, while the virtuality condition, virtual versus hybrid, was varied between subjects. The study would have been too long, and the task would have been, there would have been learning on the task if we had had people do all 4 conditions. We measured window management sorts of operations, so the number of move and resize events, as well as the magnitude of those window management operations. We measured the spread of windows on the screen, kind of the left to right and top to bottom extent of windows on the overall display the percentage of space that they occupied and how efficient space usage was. And then we asked people about their ratings on various user experience metrics and interviewed them to get more detail. And then finally, we captured snapshots of the organization every 10 seconds. We tried to have people do a fairly ecologically valid task. So this is similar to a task that we and others have used in prior studies. So the task involved, as you can see here, 6 windows. Sorry, is that right? Yeah, 6 windows. We had 2 primary tasks that people did sequentially. So part of the time they were doing a copying task where they were looking at a PDF document, typing the text in that document into a Word window, but then also replacing some information from the PDF with particular student information, fake student information that was displayed in an image. So that involved 3 windows. And then the other part of the time they were doing a comparing task where they had to look at a Word document and a PDF and highlight the differences in the Word document. And then in parallel, they were doing a secondary task where there was an email client, a simulated email client, and they had to watch for new emails to come in and respond to those by clicking on them as soon as they saw a new email. Okay, so going to the results, first set of results are about layout at the end of the task. So what we see here is, first of all, that multi-monitor had an overall larger number of pixels being used by Windows. So that means that even though everybody had the same set of windows, in Multimon they made those windows bigger. And this is likely because they were snapping them to be full screen or half screen, even though some of them didn't need to be that big. Whereas Canvas had a larger amount of pixels in windows that were overlapping. So rather than tiling, as was afforded by the snapping capability in Multimon, those windows were more overlapping and more freeform. And multi-monitor significantly occupied a higher percentage of screen space. So in terms of the overall screen space, there was more space being used by Windows in the multi-monitor. So overall, this means that people were kind of more efficient with their use of space in Canvas. So what we saw typically is that people in the Canvas condition would kind of compress their windows down as far as possible towards the center so that they didn't have to move their heads or eyes as much. Window management operations, there's a lot of results in the paper, but just the basic result is that Canvas led to more grab and release actions, so they moved windows more often. They didn't move them very far necessarily, but they did have to tweak the window positions more often in Canvas. And in multi-monitor, approximately half the time when people moved a window, they snapped it to either the full screen or half of a screen. As far as head movement goes, surprisingly, we didn't see any difference in the amount of yaw rotation that people did looking left and right in the Canvas and Multimon conditions. But we did see a difference in pitch rotation. So people in Canvas tilted their head up and down less than in the Multimon condition. And I think that will be explained by some of the screenshots on the next slide. These are kind of the strategies or how people chose to lay out space in virtual versus Multimon and in Canvas, in Canvas versus Multimon, and these are the virtual conditions. So in virtual Canvas on the top here, we saw a bunch of different strategies. So some people tried to manually tile windows, but not using all of the space, as you see in A. In B, some people tried to divide the screen up by task, the 3 different tasks that I mentioned. In C, we see some overlapping so that people would use less space and have to move their heads less. And in D, we see that some people took the windows that they weren't using for the current primary task and just moved them off to the side because they didn't need to be looked at that moment. In virtual Multimon, we really only saw kind of 2 main strategies. One is use all the monitors and snap windows to either the entire monitor or half of the monitor. And then the second was we saw some people who didn't want to use the top row of virtual monitors at all because they felt it was uncomfortable to look up at that top row of monitors. And so they only used the lower row of monitors and did some manual tiling. They actually divided the screens vertically so you could have one window on the top and one on the bottom. In the hybrid conditions, we saw some distinct strategies. For Canvas in A and B, we saw people placing many windows on the physical monitor, especially the windows for the current task, And then other windows that were required were placed as close as possible to that physical monitor, so kind of surrounding it and leaving the far periphery blank. For hybrid multi-monitor, we saw people placing windows kind of more homogeneously, just using the physical and virtual parts of the screen in similar ways. For user experience, in terms of overall preference, slightly more than half of participants preferred Canvas over Multimon, but this really depended on which group they were in. So if people were in the virtual group, it was 7 out of 10, 70% of the participants preferred Canvas. But if they were in the hybrid group, less than half of participants preferred Canvas. So there seems to be an interaction here in terms of preference. And in terms of what people said in the rating scales and the interviews, Canvas had a bunch of good qualities for user experience, so it produced, they felt it produced significantly higher quality work, even though there were no actual differences in performance on the task. They felt that the Canvas was more glanceable. They felt that it had more screen space. It felt bigger, even though it wasn't. And they felt that it provided more freedom in layout. On the other hand, people also perceived that Canvas provided less structure, obviously since it didn't have the snapping or the boundaries, and that it required more thought and manual operation. So to revisit our hypotheses, here we go. The first is that we thought Canvas would have a more compact layout, and we did find evidence to support this hypothesis. People were more efficient with their use of screen space. We also thought it would lead to less head rotation and cursor movement, and this was true in terms of vertical movement, but not horizontal movement, interestingly. Thirdly, we thought it would lead to more window management operations, and this also turned out to be true, but that did not lead to a decrease in user experience. And it was partially true that Canvas would support more diverse window placement strategies. We did see more strategies on virtual Canvas, but the hybrid Canvas did still constrain people to kind of acting the same way. We thought that multi-monitor would lead to better user experience, and in fact, this was not the case at all, as I just showed. Overall preference, and especially in the virtual condition, people thought that Canvas was a better user experience. Hybrid conditions did not take longer in terms of organizing the windows. And finally, we accepted the hypothesis that multi-monitor really pairs well with hybrid, and Canvas pairs well with virtual. So takeaway messages from this work: Canvas is more efficient in terms of layout. There's less cursor and head movement, but more window management. So in particular, if you have a very small field of view, like in the HoloLens 2, Canvas can be a good choice, especially because of the head movement result. Multi-monitor didn't lead to a better user experience, but it did lead to, in some sense, easier window management, less need to think about and to manually operate where windows would go. And so if you need less overhead, this is a good choice. And then overall, again, I think the key takeaway is that if you want to extend a physical monitor, think about doing a virtual multi-mon. But if you're replacing a physical monitor and only using virtual displays, this Canvas can be a really good choice. Okay, so with that, I'll be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Doug. I'll go to you. Quick question. Could it be possible that the vertical movements, the horizontal movements were not happening because instead of their head moving, they were actually moving their body?
So we were only tracking heads. So if they had turned their whole body and their head, that would have been captured in the head tracking data.
Right.
Yeah, I think the reason why we didn't find a difference in kind of the yaw rotation is because in the hybrid conditions in particular, there was this boundary. So if you placed anything on the virtual portion, it was still pretty far outside the center of the field of view. And so you still had to look left and right.
I see.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Doug. Nice work. Very interesting. I'm wondering whether the discretization of the space offered by the multi-monitor layout is at all supportive of spatial memory compared to a continuous canvas. Do you have any feelings about that?
I think prior work would definitely support that. We didn't have any tasks in our experiment where spatial memory was necessary. I mean, we only had 6 windows, so it's pretty easy to remember where you left all of them. If we had a task that required 20 windows and some of them were invisible some of the time, refinding them, I think there'd be a benefit to multi-mon there for sure. Yeah.
So very interesting. I'm curious to know if you have a mind to do this experiment with other productivity tools like CAD system or whatever, other applications, because okay, office tools are very common, I understand, I fully agree, but there are a lot of other specific work or activities that really need to compare and really need a lot of state, even as a stock market, that's to say. Okay, so thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a wide variety of different application use cases where, having more screen space is needed. And I don't claim that these results necessarily generalize to all cases where you're using multiple windows. But I think, if you're doing tasks that require comparison or copying across multiple windows, looking back and forth, that's what we tried to capture with these office productivity tasks. But of course, more research is needed.
Let's thank Doug Bowman for the great presentation. You can ask him afterwards. Sorry about that. So next presenter is Zahra Borhani. She's presenting survey of annotations in extended reality systems. And you have to put it in presenter mode and it will come out. You have to go. There you go. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is Zahra, known as Feiyu, and thank you. Known as Feiyu, and I'm a PhD student at Francisco's lab, Jinghui lab, and in this project, we provided a survey of annotation in extended reality. My co-authors are Prashast, Sharma from University of Florida and Francisco Ortega. So annotation have been used widely into the research, and when we are looking at annotation in 3D user interfaces, there are not that many papers that focused on the use of annotation in XR environment, and there is no survey of annotation in VR system or AR system. So we wanted to provide comprehensive knowledge and encourage the other authors to provide the information of their annotations completed. Because when we were looking at the papers, many of the papers did not provide enough information about their annotations. In general, this survey tries to answer these 6 questions: which type of annotation have been used, which type of display technology or input devices, and what collaborations have been used. And also we wanted to know what are the common annotation tasks and annotation methods, in addition to challenges and gaps in the surveyed papers. The reviewed method that we used was an investigation of the papers through 3 digital libraries, IEEE Explorer, ACM, and Springer Link, and we filtered out some of the papers through 4 phases. We checked the papers based on keyword selection of their abstract or paper type title, by the keyword annotation, augmented reality or virtual reality, mixed reality or extended reality. And out of the papers that we found, we filtered out the venues that were not related. Then we had a full text screen and filtered out the papers that were not related. And finally, we removed the papers that were repeated, which concluded in 103 papers. Here you can see we provided the distribution of the survey papers per year, and as you can see, most of the papers have been published during the last decade. And ISMAR and IEEE were two common and most popular venues for annotation papers. So, but what is an annotation in a 3D interface? So many previous papers considered annotation as a mere text. But there was a survey by Fonet et al. In immersive analytics, and they included graphical annotations. There were some other works that included highlighting, hand gesture as annotations. However, all of these definitions were very narrow for our work, so we adopted the definition by Witter et al., which means that we consider annotation as any form of virtual information that is added to an existing virtual object, or it can be an entire scene. And it provides more information about that target and describe it. Here you can see different type of annotation forms. As we said, it can be anything from hand-drawn, graphical or textual annotation, or video and audio annotations. So regarding annotation classification, so we can divide the annotation based on their dimension to 2D, 3D, or it might be created in 2D displays and then adding the depth dimensions and render to 3D. So we can divide it based on screen fix or word fix, and word fix means that the annotations is linked to a specific location in 3D space or a specific target. Annotation can be freeform, means that it can be created in real time, or predefined, which means that it can be selected from a predefined set of annotations. Annotation can be divided based on their target complexity from a single point to an entire scene, and also based on their interactivity, which can be static, from static that the user is only reviewer, or creatable, which means that the user can create a new annotation for a new target. So here you can see the most common annotation that have been using during the annotation system, which were text, 2D or 3D model, hand drawings, and most of the systems use only one annotations. For example, hand drawing, text, and 2D and 3D models. In addition to one single annotation form that has been used, there were many papers that used text and 2D models together. Other than most of the papers have not used many annotation forms together. Here you can see the shape of annotation that are popular in previous study, and actually it is important because when you are creating an annotation in a collaborative setup, you want to know what does it mean by that annotation form. So for example, if the user use ISMAR, it means that, okay, this object needs to be removed, or a circle for locating an annotation. Here you can see some of the most common annotation colors that have been used. So as you can see, most popular one was, for example, white, no black, billboard. Yeah, so the most common annotations colors you can see, so it's white on no billboard, or for example, black on white billboard, or black on blue on white billboard. So when you are creating your annotation system, it is important to make sure that, okay, it is pretty clear, especially it is important in AR systems to be readable. So here are different display technologies that have been used. So AR HMD, AR handheld devices like mobile devices, spatial augmented reality, like for example, 3D-sided wall projectors, VR HMD, VR screen surrounded displays like Cave and VR table, where the type of display technologies that have been used. And here we provided the annotation display technologies in addition to the associated input devices, we provided examples in the paper and some of the systems that input devices that have been used for authoring annotations. And most of the papers actually were using handheld devices because it is easier, so still it is much related to 2D displays. And here we provided the collaboration types. So 33% of the papers were using a collaborative setup, and we divided this collaboration based on location of use, time, and display. And as you can see, remote, synchronized, and asymmetrical were the most common collaborative setup. By asymmetrical means that so they used two different display technologies. Most of the paper actually used 2D displays and an AR or VR system. So the remote user created an annotation in 2D and then rendered in 3D. So not that many work that allow users in 3D to create annotations. And so there is a lot of place for doing research in this area. So based on annotation tasks, so we wanted to know what are the common annotation tasks that have been used. So annotation creation task was one of the most common ones. Many papers asked the users to create annotation by reproducing a specific pattern, and also they were asked participants to, for example, create some tags. And another one was providing assistance, and the most common ones were the ones that used a remote worker, a remote expert, and local worker setup. And the other one was search task that asked the users to find among other annotation or find a virtual object and then create an annotation around it and locate that object. The last one was procedural tasks, which ask the participants to complete a sequence of activities. For example, select a sequence of label annotations. Finally, we have annotation methods. So in annotation methods, there were many details, and many studies try to improve their annotation methods. Some of the most common ones were beautification process that ask that actually, for example, a user create an imperfect circle, and then through some process, this imperfect circle turn to a perfect circle. We have placement management, filtering, and clustering, and there were some algorithms to improve the view management of the user and decrease the workload and clutter. And we have predictive annotation, which actually predictive annotation that actually allows users to look at the annotations, and while the user can see the current annotation, then they can actually see a hint for the next annotation, which improves their performance. Finally, we have a database of our surveys. So most information that we gathered, and there are, for example, what type of collaboration have been used, what type of display technologies, what type of input devices, and all of information is provided in this pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. Questions?
Steve Feiner, Columbia University. Thank you. It's nice to see people doing the survey that overviews the things that people have done. One thing I'm wondering, I'm realizing I can't even access the paper right now without trying to log in and stuff because it's not one of the regular conference ones, so I can't look at it. But can you give us an idea of what your sort of conclusions are from it? That would be really useful to hear.
Yeah, sure. So basically, we found that, for example, annotation have been not used many in the collaborative setups that, for example, the XR user is the annotator. So most of the papers just only allowed another user to create, which is a 2D display user, to create it. So there was not that many paper on it, and most of them actually used a remote setup, synchronized. But when we are thinking about annotation, one of the most common one is like Google Lock or something like that, that allows user to do the annotation asynchronized in different times. And but actually, I think there was a experiment that allows both users on the same technology to provide annotation in XR interfaces. And there are many limitations, and also the annotation methods. There were not that many. Most of the papers didn't provided annotation. Even the papers that we reviewed, they used annotation, but their main focus was not on annotations. There were most of the papers on annotation placement, some algorithms, how we can manage that. Still, it is an NP hard problem, so many work on it, but most of them were only thinking about tags or textual, so there was not a paper that, for example, what happens if we have different type of annotation forms and we want to manage it in a display. So this kind of question still remained unexplored.
Thank you, Faisal. The paper should be on the IEEE Digital Library.
Yes,
It may still be in early access for some reason, but short questions. I'll email you the. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that.
Invited ones not made available.
Okay. She's leaving. She's leaving. Can I still do it? Yeah, I have another. It's not a quick one. It's more a curiosity. So it's very useful work. First of all, compliments. A question is, I'm curious to know. You did a query when you filter, for application where about studies about annotation. The curiosity is that it could be not feasible, but to look all the augmented reality application existing, so it's not feasible, and see how the people did it in reality. But okay, so my question is, how do you feel it's happening in reality compared to, your study?
Okay, sure. So I think in reality, so I can say most of the papers were not focusing on that annotation. So I think still these keywords allow me to find the best paper that related to annotation, but still maybe it's not. But still, I think I found the best one, because when I was looking at the annotation in Google Scholars and searching the other criteria, I then find that many papers that were related to annotation that my filtering search did not included them in this pool.
Thank you so much. And we're wrapping up this session with the last paper, LookUP, Command Search Using DOL Free Eye Typing in Mixed Reality by Jinghui. Sorry,
Jinghui.
Thank you. So go ahead.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Jinghui Hu, and I'm going to present our work, LookUP, Command Search Using DOL-Free Eye Typing in Mixed Reality. This work is in collaboration with John Dudley and Kristensson from the University of Cambridge. So mixed reality headsets provide immersive and interactive environments, but they have introduced several challenges when it comes to efficiently interacting with digital content. One of the primary issues here is the limited input capabilities available on these headsets. The traditional command input methods, such as the menu-based command selection, are often slow or demand precise hand interactions. For example, a menu navigation often requires multiple steps, and as the number of hierarchical layers increases, the inefficiency of the navigating through them becomes more apparent, and this leads to slower task completion time. Additionally, mid-air gesture-based input is another popular solution. It often relies on precise hand movements or gestures, which can be difficult to execute accurately sometimes. It also requires the memorization of complex trajectories or gestures, and this makes it more challenging to scale to richer command sets. In many hand-occupied environments, such as industrial settings, and traditional input methods are not very practical. There is a clear need for hands-free interaction that allows users to continue their tasks without relying on physical input. This need is particularly evident in multitasking environments, where users are juggling multiple tasks simultaneously. Additionally, as mixed reality systems grow in complexity, there is an increasing need for scalability. Current methods become more inefficient when the number of commands increases. Hence, we followed 6 key design principles to ensure the system is effective and user-friendly. Firstly, our system bypasses the traditional multi-level menu structure and allows the users to directly search and access commands. Secondly, the interface should be kept clean and uncluttered. This helps the users to focus on their primary tasks. We also designed the system to avoid accidental activations. For the activation of our system, users must align both their head and eye gaze to activate the virtual keyboard. Additionally, by relying on eye gaze for command input, we reduce the physical strain on users, such as arm fatigue, and makes the system more suitable for long-term use. Most importantly, LookUP supports hands-free interaction through eye and head gaze interactions, which is useful in scenarios where hands are occupied. The system is also designed to easily accommodate more commands of their other applications without requiring major redesigns. Here's how the system looks like. And on the left side, you can see the LookUP uses an activation mechanism that relies on head and eye gaze alignment. A search icon is positioned just above the user's field of view. When the user's first gaze, either its head or eye, hits the search icon, the system highlights it, and when the user aligns their second gaze, the system triggers the search keyboard display. This action results in an upward head motion, and it's where the system gets its name. The activation mechanism ensures that the commands are only initiated intentionally. After activation, the user is presented with a virtual keyboard and command options, as you can see on the right side. Each time a new word is typed or a word alternative is selected, a short list of commands appear above the keyboard view, and the icons next to the commands indicate their respective categories. We collected all the commands available from the default HoloLens 2 start menu and the settings to ensure that the users had access to all the standard commands. And we support 2 types of eye typing methods here, dual-based and dual-free. In the dual-based method, users select a key by gazing at it for a set duration of 500 milliseconds. Once the dual time is reached, the key is selected. And in contrast, dual-free eye typing allows the user to gaze at keys without a fixed dual time. Instead, the system uses a probabilistic model to predict the intended word based on the user's gaze sequence and the key proximity, and confirms the word by gazing at the spacebar. Here's an example of how the dual-free eye typing works. And as you can see, the user's gaze select the letters without any dual time, and the system predicts the intended word based on the gaze path. To evaluate our system, we conducted a user study with 12 participants, 7 female and 5 males, aged between 20 and 36. The system was developed in Unity and using extended eye tracking API from MRTK, and it was deployed on HoloLens 2. The participants completed three conditions: the hand menu, which uses the default HoloLens hand-based input, and up dual, which uses the dual-based eye typing, and also up dual free, which uses the dual free eye typing system. In the hand menu condition, we replicated the default HoloLens 2 start menu layout and its behaviors within our experimental setup. This would allow us to fully log the user interactions during the study. And to maintain the consistency with the typical HoloLens experience, we also reproduced the default hand gestures for bringing up the start menu. We used a command selection task where the participants were asked to retrieve commands from 3 hierarchical levels. These ranged from basic commands like opening up the photo app to more complex tasks such as adjusting environmental settings or configuring network options. At the start of our study, participants were introduced to the 3 conditions. After that, they proceeded with command retrieval tasks, and these tasks were grouped by varying levels of difficulty and hierarchical depth. The tasks were presented in a randomized order across 3 conditions. Throughout the study, we measured completion time, selection time, error rates, and other subjective ratings. Now let's look at the results. We measured the completion time, which refers to the total time it took for participants to activate the search function to the selection of the final command. And our analysis revealed that UP dual-free methods significantly reduced completion time by an average of 30.5% compared to the hand menu. And this improvement was even more pronounced for commands located in deeper menu levels, where the UP dual-free method outperformed the hand-based menu by 52.3%, as you can see here in the level 3. In addition to completion time, we also measured selection time for the 2 eye-typing conditions. This refers to the time it took for participants to select the correct command once the keyboard was displayed. And the dual-free eye-typing significantly reduced the selection time compared to the dual-based system. And we found that the length of the keywords did not significantly impact the selection time. And so the results of our study demonstrated that the LookUP system significantly enhanced efficiency for command search in mixed reality environments, and the dual-free eye-typing approach effectively bypasses the cognitive and the physical challenges often associated with navigating a very deep menu, especially in the deeper structures and deeper levels. Looking ahead, there are several exciting possibilities for future work. We envision that expanding LookUP to support text-based commands that allows users to retrieve not only text, but also images, 3D models, and other contextual data can be very promising and useful. And this will broaden applications across various fields, such as the creative fields, accessibility, solutions, and industrial settings. In summary, we present LookUP, a hands-free command search system for mixed reality that leverages dual-free eye-typing. And this allows the users to effectively and efficiently input commands when their hands are occupied or unavailable. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. Well, it's been a great session. Someone will say best session probably, but we'll take a question, and I think there's lunch, I think, right after. But questions?
I'm going to keep you all from lunch. Thanks for the talk. So can you speculate about which of the features of your system led to the improvement primarily? So as I understand it, there's kind of 2 innovations. One is the looking up part to kind of open the command selection, the keyboard, and the other is the dwell-free eye typing. Did you analyze like how much time was spent on each part and whether, whether one part was really producing most of the benefits or the other?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. I think because our activation is very different from like hand gesture activation as well. So I think both parts actually contributed to like the improvement of efficiency. Because we also analyzed the selection time. So both part, I think, like the activation part and also the typing part, together contributed to the like boost of efficiency.
Thank you so much. Last question, short. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for attending.